Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be telling you about the teams that everyone should have in Puzzle & Dragons. So, Puzzle & Dragons is a very large and diverse game in that there are pretty much countless team composition scenarios you can form, and you want to try and basically optimize your gameplay in terms of either efficiency in clearing a dungeon, whether that be time or the amount of thinking required, maximizing your chances against challenging content, and I basically just want to help you also be a bit more prepared when trying to find co-op partners when playing the Guerrilla or Hourly Dungeons. So this article will basically discuss the types of teams that I feel every player should at least strive towards having. None of them are going to be like hard requirements saying you have to have like all these rare machine monsters, the only team you can play, because naturally not everyone has those cards available, likes that playstyle, and for the most part it will either be recommendations for teams that have many farmable components, and you can throw in a rare machine option here and there. So, what is the point of having more than one team? Well, in all honesty, Puzzle & Dragons is quite a repetitive game when you think about it. Sometimes you're forced to play the same dungeon over and over again, sometimes maybe for the 100th time. And if you are playing the dungeon for the 100th time, you probably want to find a way to be more efficient and maximize your time usage because it could become a drag. For instance, say that one dungeon takes you 5 minutes to clear of a certain team. If you can cut that down to 4 minutes, you save 1 minute per run, and if you played 100 times, that's basically 100 minutes or 1.67 hours of time saved. Perhaps that faster team required less active skills, so less chances of error, less thinking required, so you're not as brain dead by the end of it. So the point being is you want to try and maximize your efficiency, because that is probably one thing a lot of players do start to want to achieve when they've been playing for the game for a prolonged period of time. In addition, by only having, say, one team at your disposal, you may become a little bored because you're playing the same playstyle, the same strategy over and over again, and it can become a little repetitive. So having different teams available will at least allow you to alleviate said boredom or repetition. So, generally speaking, these are the types of dungeons that are available in Puzzle & Dragons. I've kind of categorized them as best as possible, so it makes it a little easier when I describe the teams that I want you to try and pursue. So, the first type of dungeons in Puzzle & Dragons is the endgame content, or the hardest dungeon you can play. So, basically, it's the hardest content you are able to actually challenge, and what that dungeon is based on your situation. For an endgame player like myself, it's Arena 3 right now. It'll be Coliseum when it does be released. But say you're just starting out, maybe Arena 1 is the hardest thing you could even challenge, or maybe some just rogue descends. The point of the matter is your limit of what you can challenge always shifts upward, hopefully, if you keep playing Puzzle & Dragons in a very dedicated manner. And a lot of times, maybe these hardest dungeons you could clear is sometimes like just a one-off thing. So let's say it's the one-shot challenges or the challenge 10s, and it's just like very difficult content to play through, and it requires thinking and research and setting up. So that's one of the types of dungeons you will play. The next is kind of Arena 3. Now, that oftentimes is the hardest dungeon you are able to play, but for some players, such as myself, you are able to clear Arena 3 relatively easily, and you want to find the most efficient way to do so, because Arena 3 right now offers the best rank experience, the latent Tamadra drops, and the Radar Dragons and Pies. Like, it's just a great dungeon to play over and over again, and you want to try and find a way to play that as quickly as possible if that is your goal. Conversely, Arena 1 is another broad category of types of dungeons you will play in Puzzle & Dragons. Now, Arena 1 was once the hardest dungeon in the game. However, through power creep, co-op, skill inheritance, and now like the stat transfers through skill inheritance, it's become significantly easier because we now have stronger teams available, we have more pluses available, we have more pies available, we just have more developed teams overall. So it's become an easier dungeon to play, and for a lot of players, it's become somewhere to either dump stamina or just rank up relatively mindlessly. And you want to play this dungeon often because it offers great rank experience. It does give you a free pie at the end, and it's going to be a dungeon you want to play quickly, of course, because you may want to be playing it over and over again. Now, the team you may use for this dungeon may differ from your Arena 3 team if you can find something that is significantly faster. Next is the Rogue Descents or various other lucrative dungeons, and generally speaking, Rogue Descents are those that have the pink border and have your monsters start at level 1. And when you're playing through it, the monsters level up, and you actually acquire a hefty amount of plus eggs, a very generous amount of rank experience, a pre-draw for 500 monster points, and collateral other drops, so it could be like monster experience, evolution materials, or a beneficial drop, say Miru. So the point of the matter is, Rogue Descents and other lucrative dungeons like that you want to play over and over again, and the team you use should be as fast as possible. It's probably going to greatly differ than your endgame team, provided you have pushed beyond these types of dungeons. So again, we need a different type of team to tackle these dungeons in an efficient manner. And last but not least are the Guerrilla Dungeons. And the Guerrilla Dungeons have no primate involved, and they are actually dungeons that last for an hour that come randomly throughout the day. You can check it on Puzzle & Dragon X, as well as Pad Guide for the timing of your hour. So these hourly dungeons want to be played obviously in an efficient manner because we only have an hour to do so. So in order to maximize your time, you generally want to play in co-op because it will allow you to form teams that will speed through dungeon much faster, as well as saving you half the stamina. So the idea of the teams I'm going to outline in a moment is basically improving your appeal for co-op partners, because if you have these teams ready to go, people will want to play with you. So for the most part, these dungeons are generally restricted to Starden, Tan Infestation, Tamadra Infestation, Pre-Draw Infestation, and Extreme King Metal Dragon. So those are generally the better ones to play. There are other ones, but they're not as popular by comparison. So what are the recommended teams to pursue now that we know what the types of dungeons that there are in Puzzle & Dragons? So it's not feasible to recommend everyone has the Raw Dragon team because not everyone has the perfect cards to go along with it. For myself, I only have a single Isis and none of the inherits. So I could never make a good Raw Dragon team if I had Raw Dragon. So it is pointless to recommend everyone has a certain or particular team because everyone has different playstyles, everyone has different monster boxes. So we need to find things that can obviously support yourself. So generally speaking, you want to have an endgame team, and what is your endgame team will obviously vary from person to person. Now, that endgame team is what's going to be used to carry you through all content. So wherever you're starting now, say like regular descents is your endgame right now, you should find a way to try and push through those as through the most powerful team you have at your disposal. And as you progress, you'll hit like say rogue descents, arenas, and higher arenas, and then challenge 10s, so on and so forth. So for a lot of players, generally speaking, Miru may or may not be your endgame leader because she is at least farmable. However, not everyone has a perfect box to support her, and you should be doing your best to just try and figure out what is the leader that's going to take you the furthest. And this is the team you should be investing your plus eggs, the inherits, and the latent Madras first. Like, this should be your priority, because if you are able to clear more content, you basically unlock more rewards, whether they are more challenges or just arena pie farming or more pluses. The point of the matter is you want to basically have this team optimized as soon as possible, because that will allow you to tackle endgame, like more content as you progress. So the next type of team is the Rogue Descent team, or basically Awoken Liu variants. Now, like I mentioned before, Rogue Descents are one of the most lucrative dungeons to play for many reasons, and in all honesty, for the most part, Awoken Liu is going to be the fastest and most accessible leader for most players. Now, this is because he's just a 5-star rare machine monster, and his team generally comprises of multiple Zeus Dioses, usually 3, and possibly a Tengu for skill boosts. And what you do inherit on your Tengu or Liu Bei is up to you, so obviously that has rare machine components, but the point of the matter is it's a relatively easy team to formulate, and it should be something you do pursue. Everyone should be pursuing Zeus Dioses to max up, or max skill, because you want to basically have access to the easy buttoning. You press Zeus Dios, swipe, kills the floor. It's very efficient. Now, obviously not everyone has an Awoken Liu Bei at their disposal, and for myself, I felt that pain quite strongly for the first several months of his release, and you actually can use Australis, which I did, a Green Odin, or a Perseus, as well as even Zeus Dios as viable leader pairings. And naturally all of those have lesser multipliers, and maybe a lesser active skill, but you are able to compensate and work around it. You might need to have extra burst active for the boss, so it will always be a little slower, but if you build your team intelligently, it should not be an issue. Like for myself, I did use Australis plus Awoken Liu Bei, and back when it first came out, I was able to easily button farm through Lynthia Descendant. Now there's a video here you can feel free to watch, but the point of the matter is you don't need to have Liu Bei to successfully button through content. You can easily find an alternative pairing. So this should be the team you invest your plus eggs into second after your endgame team. Basically the idea is you get your endgame team to start clearing rogue descents and pushing through content, and then you start plussing out and investing in this team, because it will allow you to basically farm Rogue descends more efficiently, so you'll have more plus eggs rolling in, you'll have the monster points, and healthy amounts of rank ups. So again, you would have your Liu Bei or Liu Bei alternative, your Dioses, and your Tengu. And you should just really just do it. Like, you really should. So other alternatives are you could obviously use the machine gods or machine drops like Machine Hera, Athena, or Zeus, and those do work, but they are slower. So in this video here, I basically showcase how you can button through Nordis Descended with a double Awoken Liu Bei, or using a Machine Hera team. Now, the Machine Hera team is a little slower, however, it still gets the job done, so depending on what cards you have at your disposal, you will figure out what is more efficient. Again, this article will be linked in the YouTube description down below, so you can take a look at the other videos that I have inserted in. The next team you should try and invest in is the Arena 1 farming team. Now, once Arena 1 has become relatively easy for you, you want to find a way to efficiently play it. And oftentimes that team will differ from your endgame team. So I'm going to use Miru or Raw Dragon as an example of your endgame team. And while both of those are very powerful and capable of clearing Arena 1 with ease, they are quite slow by comparison to other alternatives. They either require more thinking involved, actually both of them require quite a bit of thinking for the Heart Cross plus other matches, or all 6 elements for Raw Dragon, and it's just going to be slower to play through. And in an ideal world, you want to have something a bit more mindless. So for myself, I generally use a Lakshmi team, because Lakshmi is less orb hungry, it's more flexible, it can deal with Sopdet, it can deal with Parvati with relative ease. So it just means I can clear the dungeon quite quickly with minimal thinking, and that's the team I use personally. Now, you don't necessarily have a Lakshmi or necessarily a Lakshmi team at your disposal, so you have to find something that is capable of it. Now, if it means you're using Miru or Raja because you don't have anything else, that's fine, but in the future you probably want to start investing in finding a faster team to play through Arena 1. And this team I'd recommend you invest your pluses in like third. Like, you go your endgame team, your Rogue Descent farming team, and then Arena 1 farming team be your third team. Sometimes there may be overlap of subs, so that can help, but just use your judgment, and this is a priority but not your utmost priority to do. And last but not least is the various Guerrilla Dungeon teams. And the nice thing about the Guerrilla Dungeon teams is that they are pretty much farmable for the most part. And there are several different types of Guerrilla teams you should have at your disposal. And in pretty much all cases here, I'm assuming this is all played in co-op for the stamina efficiency, and otherwise these teams wouldn't actually work. So the first team you should make is the Skill Boost team. And basically this team, all it has is subs and leaders with skill boosts. Now, I am using rare machine cards to showcase you can use them, or you could just simply use Tengus. And the point of the matter is you just want to build a team with as many skill boosts as possible. And in theory, everyone can at least build a team with multiple skill boosts, because at least Tengu is very accessible. Now, the leader you put up could either be something that has true damage, or I put Zeus Dios because it allows me to farm Starden easier, which I'll explain in a moment. But the point being is, if you have a skill boost team ready, you can join someone's room and instantly put up that team, and they'll be happy. Like, they'll be like, oh great, this person is prepared. I'm willing to play with them, because they have the other side that is required. So, the other sides are for, say, Tan, Predraw, and Tamadra Infestation. Now, for the most part, these dungeons are relatively similar. They all feature monsters with very high defense and virtually no health. And the last floor can be a bit of variance, and for the most part, all you need to have is true damage. So I have the Memorial Tamadra, the Rod Tamadra, the Mechadon, and the Bane from Batman, as well as a Reincarnated Ra for a true damage as well. Now, if we had, say, another Rod Tamadra as your leader, you would have 0 skill boosts on this side. However, your partner had here basically 3 times 5, so that's 15 skill boosts. So your partner will have enough skill boosts to have all your actives ready by turn 1. So for pre-draws, you need to have one monster with an inherit to basically absorb that 2-turn skill delay. So if my Ra had, say, SDR inherits, SDR latents or an inherit, I would be able to basically bypass that delay and just button through it. If you're playing Tamadra Infestation, you either need to have one card bind immune, so again, the Ra is bind immune, or your partner has a button, so whatever the bind is, if you're playing the 5-floor difficulty, you can always have at least one more button available. For Tan Infestation, you don't need any modifications because it's 4 floors and there's no mechanics whatsoever. So the idea is you basically just want to have true damage, and all of the subs here are farmable, so there should be really no excuse for why you don't have this team available either. Next is Starden. Now, there are many different variations of how you can play Starden, but I feel that this Zeus Dios team, for the most part, is the most accessible and easy to use team. Now, because Zeus Dios is required for Awoken Liu, chances are you have it at least invested in. And Zeus Dios is, I feel, a superior leader than Goemon because A, Zeus Dios is used on Liu teams, or Liu variants, so you are investing already, whereas Goemon's not used as much by comparison. His multiplier is 49 versus 25 times, so it guarantees a kill on the final floor. And if you do utilize Arthur, you are able to gain a balance enhance for the final floor. So again, your Zeus Dioses don't have to be as invested, so it just saves you plus eggs as well as levels. And last but not least, Zeus Dios also has the co-op boost, so he has 50% more stats. So even though the team has no wood rows, no wood subs, the Zeus Dioses do more than enough damage to actually sweep through the dungeon. Now, you need one Arthur for this team. Arthur comes from the Gung Ho Pally machine, which is coming up very shortly. And with one Arthur, you are able to basically instantly kill a blue ogre, which Goemon cannot do. And you kill the blue ogre, and you reset your health to 1 on the first floor. After that, you could just use 3 devil fishes, but if you're lucky to have 2 Arthurs, you have Arthur to use on the 4th floor, and that gives you the balance bonus. And that balance bonus means Zeus Dios, it's even harder. And for myself, with my 297 Dios with the co-op boost, it hits for like 4.2, 4.3 million for one, so 2 liters is more than enough damage to sweep all the devils. There are 5 buttons pressed in total, but there's less thinking involved in, say, Goemon, because Goemon to think, oh, I can't use Goemon's active because if it's a blue ogre, it doesn't kill it, and then you kind of ruin your whole system. So I feel the team is very safe and very consistent as well, because you don't have to worry about, do I have enough damage to kill the blue devil as well. So that's a team that you should be pursuing, I feel, for start-in farming. Again, there's a nice video here for reference. It will at least showcase how the team works in action. So, in conclusion, Puzzle & Dragons is a very diverse game, and there's essentially limitless team building options. However, I do recommend you at least try and pursue the teams I've outlined here, especially the guerrilla farming teams, because those are farmable. Because not only will this increase your chances of finding a co-op partner, it will also help give you some guidelines of where to invest your plus eggs and latent madras and inherits. Because once you get the endgame team running, you can clear all the content and you can power up other teams that you like to play for fun at the same time. So let me know what teams you find most helpful for you. Like maybe there's some of the teams outlined here, or what do you find has been instrumental to your success? So let me know in the comments below. Hopefully you have a mantastic day, and happy puzzling!